The smear on my cheek wasn't just lipstick. It was a brand. A searing red mark that sank beneath my skin and etched itself somewhere deeper, into a place darker than flesh. It wasn't just a trace of her. It was a symbol. A quiet, damning declaration of something lost. It didn't just mark a moment. It marked the beginning of the end. She stumbled through the front door, just as dawn's early light began bleeding through the curtains. Liliana, my wife for 10 years, reeked of cheap tequila. Her hair was tousled, her eyes glossed over with the haze of a long, reckless night. But beneath the burn of alcohol on her skin lingered a scent that didn't belong to her. Light. Floral. Foreign. It clung to her like guilt. Her heels clattered to the floor as she wobbled forward, and she looked up at me with a dazed smile. Her eyes, once alive with warmth and familiarity, were now murky, unreadable. "Sorry I'm late, babe," she mumbled, and leaned in to press a kiss against my cheek. The lipstick transferred without resistance, easily, thoughtlessly. "Girls' night ran long," she added with a laugh that didn't sound like her anymore. It used to be my favorite sound. That laugh could chase shadows from my darkest days. But now it landed hollow and wrong, like it had been borrowed from another life. The signs had been blinking like warning lights for months. I'd just refused to see them. Missed calls. Secretive messages. The way she guarded her phone like a secret. The way she turned her body slightly whenever it lit up, hiding the screen from my view. There were new clothes too, styles she never used to wear. Fresh haircuts. Lingerie buried deep in the drawer, suddenly revived. She called it self-care. Said she was working on her confidence again. I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. But love had grown quiet between us. Her touch lacked the weight it once carried. Her smile came too quickly now, too perfectly timed, like it had been rehearsed. And her eyes, they rarely found mine anymore. They floated somewhere else. Still I held on. Tighter than I should have. Told myself every relationship has its seasons. That this was just winter. That if I loved her hard enough, long enough, she'd come back to me. I clung to that belief like a man clings to driftwood in a storm. But that morning, the one where the lipstick was more than lipstick, shattered the illusion I'd been living inside. She passed out not long after walking in, collapsing onto the bed with the weariness of someone who'd given too much of herself away. Her makeup stained the pillowcase, her breath shallow and uneven. I sat at the edge of the bed, staring at her face, now so unfamiliar in sleep. A phone buzzed gently from the nightstand beside her, disturbing the silence with a pulse of betrayal. I hesitated. I had never crossed that line. I had trusted her, loved her, with the kind of honesty that should have been sacred. But when trust turns into a fairy tale, it grants you permission to question everything. The screen lit up. "Tonight was amazing. Miss you already. Ex spa day ***. My heart tightened. Spa day. That was the excuse last week, too. My fingers trembled as I picked up the phone and unlocked it. What I found hollowed me out. The messages stretched back for weeks, no months. Not just passing flirtations. Not mistakes. These were conversations drenched in longing. In secrecy. There were jokes I didn't understand. Codes I wasn't meant to crack. Mentions of hotel rooms. Backseats. Afternoon escapes disguised as meetings. There were pictures, some blurry, some intimate. This wasn't a fling. This was a second life. One she built while sleeping beside me. Then the voicemails. The first was a man's voice, low, confident. *Hey beautiful. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. *. My stomach twisted. The next was her. But not the version of her I knew. Her voice was soft, teasing. *Oh Daniel. I can't stop thinking about you either. Being with you, it's everything. Daniel. That name cut through me like glass. I sat there in silence as the sky lightened outside the window. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just sat numb, watching the morning sun creep across the floor like a quiet intruder. When she woke groggy and slow, I was already in the kitchen, coffee waiting. She rubbed her temples, unaware of the storm that had already torn through the room while she slept. I placed the mug in front of her and sat down across the table. "How was girls' night?" I asked calmly. She blinked, smiled too fast. "Fun," she said. Her voice brightened with effort. "A little too much tequila." "Sure," I replied, watching her closely. "Did you enjoy the spa too?" Her hand twitched. The coffee sloshed over the rim of the cup, dripping onto the table. She didn't answer. Without another word, I reached into my pocket, pulled out her phone, and tapped the voicemail. Her own voice, breathy, warm, unfamiliar, filled the room. The sound of her loving someone else echoed between us. She paled. Her lips parted but no sound came. Her eyes darted to the phone, then to me. I can explain, she whispered. So explain, I said, and for the first time my voice cracked. Explain how you looked me in the eyes every day, while giving your heart to someone else. In the days that followed, the truth spilled out in fragments. Like chipped paint falling from a wall long neglected. She met him at a work event. At least that's how it started. One drink turned into two. A joke turned into a shared secret. A moment turned into a habit. A habit into a relationship. And we became the background noise to her new song. She said she didn't mean to fall. That she still loved me. That she was confused. But the words tasted like rot. And I couldn't unhear her voice on that voicemail. I couldn't unknow the way she smiled when she read his messages. Couldn't unfeel the moment I realized I'd been loving a version of her she'd already outgrown. All I could do was sit in the wreckage, piecing myself back together from the ashes she left behind. Do you want me to continue the next part from this scene? Or shift to his emotional aftermath, and how he handles the breakup? What began as casual flirting had evolved into something far more intimate. She called it meaningless, a lapse in judgment, a mistake. But the messages she exchanged with him told a different story. They weren't fleeting or shallow. They had warmth, rhythm, a secret language between two people who had built something deliberate. This wasn't just infidelity. It was a secret life with depth and emotion. She hadn't merely wandered. She had invested in someone else. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't look at her without seeing the echoes of those words, those images. The trust between us hadn't just cracked. It had been obliterated, reduced to dust. She moved around the house like a stranger wearing my wife's face, and I couldn't pretend anymore. But even in the pit of that heartbreak, I wasn't finished. I needed him, Daniel, to understand what he had helped destroy. I needed him to see the ruin he'd co-authored. It didn't take long to find him online. His digital life was a parade of polished images. Family vacations, corporate triumphs, smiling portraits with a wife and 2 kids. A manufactured perfection. It made my stomach turn. I waited for him on a cold evening, just outside his office building. My breath hung in the night air like a cloud of restrained rage. When he finally stepped through the revolving door, he spotted me immediately and froze. "You're Liliana's husband," he said. I nodded, my voice steady. "We need to talk." I didn't yell. I didn't lunge. I simply showed him. The texts. The photos. The voicemails. Every carefully hidden thread of his affair with my wife. I watched the color drain from his face. His confident posture collapse into something small and shaken. He stumbled over excuses. Said she hadn't told him she was married. That she made it sound like it was over. That he hadn't known. I didn't blink. I looked him in the eye and said, "You helped destroy my marriage. Now I'm going to destroy yours." Then I turned and walked away. Not in rage, not with vengeance, but with purpose. It wasn't about punishment. It was about truth. Balance. I wanted him to feel a fraction of the ache I was carrying. A taste of the fallout. Weeks later, it all came crashing down. Liliana and I filed for divorce. She moved out. Our once vibrant home became hollow, echoes bouncing off walls that used to hold laughter. She cried, she begged, said she'd do anything. But something inside me had broken clean. Her face, her voice, even her presence, triggered memories I didn't want to carry anymore. The voicemail. That name. The betrayal etched so deep it no longer bled, it just ached. Daniel's world didn't survive untouched either. His wife found out. She left him. The carefully curated life he'd presented to the world began to fracture. His smiles disappeared from social media. His silence told a story of its own. No one came out of it whole. Only shattered pieces remained, scattered in places too painful to gather. I sold the house, packed up the remnants of a life I no longer recognized, moved into a smaller place, quieter, emptier. At first, the silence was unbearable. The nights were the worst, the bed too cold, too wide, too lonely. But then something started to shift. I reached out to friends I had slowly drifted from over the years. Took long, meandering walks just to hear my own thoughts without noise. Started sleeping again, not deeply at first, but enough. Enough to wake up and not feel like I was drowning in memory. Time passed. The sharp edges of grief softened into dull aches. And one ordinary afternoon, I saw her again. Liliana. She was sitting in a coffee shop, alone, a mug clutched between both hands. Her gaze was distant, fixed on something beyond the window. She looked different. Softer. Worn. Her smile, when it came, barely reached her eyes. Time had touched her too. We talked. Not about the past in detail. Just soft reflections. Time. Life. The strange way the world keeps moving, even when yours has stopped. She apologized again. This time, it didn't sound rehearsed. It sounded real. Quiet. From a place of understanding rather than desperation. And I forgave her, not for her, but for myself. I let it go because holding on to it had cost me too much already. The pain no longer defined me. The memories, the lipstick, the lies, the sound of her voice in that message, had lost their power. They were part of my story, yes, but no longer the author of it. The scars remain, and I carry them without shame. They are proof that I lived, that I loved deeply, and that even when love betrayed me, I survived.